Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me today. Today I'm going to be doing a response video to the comments that you guys left on my video from last week. My video entitled, "If There's No Judgment on the Other Side, Then Where Do All the Bad People Go?" And there is a wide variety of opinions and questions and thoughts expressed in the comments that I just thought I'd like to go through and respond to. This video is going to be different than most of my other videos. It's going to be more in the style of the lives I do, just more of a conversational style. It won't be highly edited, so it won't be moving along quite as quickly. And that's just very simply because it is 2:30 Friday afternoon right now, and this video has to go up in about 24 hours, and I just don't have time to do all the editing, but I really want to do this. I'm just going to go through and read a bunch of your comments and give my responses. So first off, before I say anything, I just want to make a note that I am sharing my thoughts and my opinions in this video based on research that I've done, mostly because of this topic. It's information that I'm getting from the near-death experience stories that I have read and heard over the past 6 years, the people that I have interviewed and spoken with. I am not telling you this is absolute truth and you need to believe it. I left religion behind me a long time ago, guys. So a lot of you, one of the questions that keeps coming up is like, why should we listen to what's in near-death experiences? Why are you putting so much priority on near-death experiences? Well, because that's what my interest is. Near-death experiences changed my life, and I find a lot of joy and meaning in fulfillment in studying and learning from near-death experiences and seeing how do they fit with other things, like how do they fit with the teachings from my Christian upbringing, and how do they fit with A Course in Miracles or these other various sources. That's just what I love to do. I'm not here saying you have to listen to me. That I'm just sharing information for those who are interested because it brings me joy and because I love to do it. Okay, so a bunch of you were asking me, why Hitler? Why did you? Because my caption said, then what about Hitler? Right? If there's no judgment on the other side, then what about Hitler? And a bunch of you brought up the point, well, why are you using Hitler as your example when there's other people who have done worse than Hitler? Well, the reason why I used Hitler as my example is because that's what I'm constantly being asked. So you guys are asking me all the time, well, if hell isn't eternal and if there's no judgment on the other side, then what about Hitler? Where does Hitler go? So Hitler is just the example that everybody uses, and I'm answering your questions in this video, so I'm using the example that you guys have been asking me about. A bunch of you have left comments saying things to the effect of, tell this to those who are in hell, right? Tell this, that there's no judgment to those near-death experiencers who went to hell. All of the near-death experience stories that I used in my video were hellish experiences. So I'm specifically looking at the hellish experiences when I'm answering this question about what happens to people who do bad things. Is there judgment for them? What happens to them? So I'm not looking so much at the heavenly experience when I answer that question. The heavenly experiences. I'm looking specifically at the hellish experiences. And yes, even though the heavenly experiences, according to IANs, are a much higher percentage than the hellish experiences, so many people, like millions of people, have had a near-death experience, right? So there are lots of hellish experiences to look at. Another thing that keeps coming up a lot is people saying either you're being way too harsh and way too strict in saying that, and teaching reincarnation basically, and saying that people will have to come back and experience what they did to others. And then on the other side, of course, there's lots of people saying, well, you're not being strict enough in saying that there's no eternal hell, right? So either you're too strict or you're not strict enough. And I just want to remind you guys that these are very, very difficult topics we're dealing with. You know, why does God allow evil? Why does God allow suffering? What about judgment? Is there judgment, and what kind of judgment? These are life's hardest questions, and none of us have all the answers. And if we think we do, we're fooling ourselves. Somebody asked, somebody said, I have a hard time with the "we choose to come here" when it's in situations where they're born into families who are abusive or in extreme poverty. And this is a question that I hear a lot. But once again, I just want to say we're dealing with very tough issues here, and we're dealing with issues where I don't know that there is a good answer. There's definitely not an answer that's going to satisfy everybody. So for me, because there's a lot of details about my past that I haven't shared publicly, and I never will, out of respect to people who were involved in my past. I've shared a little bit about the religious trauma I went through, but there's a lot more that I haven't shared. But for me, coming to the understanding that I chose this for a reason, because it would help me grow in this way, in this way, in this way. And I'm certainly not saying that there are people who have had far worse experiences than me. But what I'm saying is, for myself and the things that I went through, it's extremely comforting for me to think, oh, I chose this, which means I knew ahead of time that I was strong enough to handle it. For me, that's comforting. And if that answer does not work for you, again, that's fine, but I would question you, do you have a better answer? Because I genuinely would love to hear it. Is believing that we chose to come here for a purpose, we planned this out, is that better or healthier in some way than believing that we had no say in it and God just sent us here and determined that these bad things would happen to us? Or in believing that there is no God and all these bad things are happening by chance, for no reason at all. To me, I don't like those answers. Those don't work for me. And somebody commented and said, conclusion, never, ever, 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 ever incarnate in the first place. Then your probability of messing things up drops to 0. In fact, whatever source made you in the first place bears 100% responsibility for what you did. Again, such a good question. And this is such a difficult topic. I'm not saying that I have the answers. I want to keep clarifying that. I'm just giving you my thoughts. So take it or leave it. But honestly, they say that this is why only the bravest souls come to earth. We are powerful, brave, strong, incredibly good beings. And because it is so difficult here, they say that we line up to come here because we want the experience. It's so valuable to us. But somebody commented in response to this comment, where the original commenter said, in fact, whatever source made you in the first place bears 100% responsibility for what you did. Michael Taylor responded to that and said, you are source. And honestly, guys, this is what I keep coming back to. This is the answer that I keep coming back to. That we are looking for somebody to blame for everything that's happening. And again, I just want to clarify, I am not victim blaming here. I am not saying that if something bad has happened to you in your life that it is your fault and you should be held responsible for it. That is not what I'm saying. But I'm generally speaking, as a collective, as a whole, we are not separate from source, right? And this is what my most recent class, See the Creator, was all about. That we are looking for God, we're looking for the Creator, we're looking for somebody to put the responsibility on that's outside of us and separate from us, but we are all a part of that. All together, all of us, we are a part of that, and we are responsible. And so it's like when my kids ask me questions about, well, why isn't it terrible that there's starving children in the world, and why does this happen? And my response to them is always, well, what are we doing about it? We blame God for allowing these things. We blame God for allowing these situations, but we are divine. We are allowing it. Why are we allowing it? We all live here in the same world. And we allow all of these injustices, all of these horrible things to happen. And we don't think that we individually can make a difference. So we go through our lives waiting for someone else, waiting for the world leaders to do something, waiting for Jesus to come back and make things right. And according to near-death experience testimonies, Jesus is waiting on us. Jesus is trying to wake us up to the fact that small acts of love and kindness change the world, and if we would just do that, we could right the wrongs of the world. I'm getting a little bit off on a tangent here. Just because near-death experiences have not so far included divine judgment, this does not mean there is no judgment ultimately. Based on biblical teaching, a universal judgment day is a predetermined event at a future appointed time for all people born on earth. And then there's several other comments on the same theme of the judgment day in the Bible. But this is a misunderstanding and misreading of the biblical text. What Christianity, modern day Christianity, has come to understand as the Great White Throne Judgment is exactly that. It is a modern day interpretation. The men who wrote the Bible did not believe in a future judgment to happen sometime in the afterlife in which people would be sent either to heaven or hell for all of eternity. What the men who wrote the Bible believed, like Paul, for instance, believed in what was called the resurrection. This belief initiated about 200 years. Well, the resurrection was incorporated from Zoroastrianism back in the second Babylonian captivity, the Babylonian Persian captivity. But the belief in the judgment and the Son of Man coming to judge the world at the end of the age, that's what they believed. The Son of Man would come at the end of the age to judge the world. They believed the Son of Man was a messianic figure, and this belief evolved about 200 years before the coming of Christ. And they believed that he would come to earth, he would lead a battle against the enemies of God, he would win, he would establish peace and justice in the earth, and the enemies of God would not go to eternal hell. No, they would be annihilated. They would still be alive in their physical bodies, and they would be annihilated body and spirit. They would not exist anymore. Then all the dead, whether righteous or wicked, would be raised and reunited with their bodies. The wicked would be raised simply to be annihilated, and the righteous would be raised to live forever in the kingdom of God on earth. This is what the men who wrote the Bible believed. This is what they were talking about when they talked about the Son of Man coming in glory on the clouds of heaven, right? And so if we want to correctly understand the Bible, we need to know, what did the authors mean by it? So this idea that there's going to be a judgment at some point in the future, in the afterlife, that has not occurred yet, it's not in the Bible. Somebody commented, there is no judgment on the other side because there is no other side, nor is there a God. Why continue to believe in such supernatural garbage? Because for many of us, the supernatural is not garbage. It is very real. Now, I can totally relate and sympathize with people who were raised in a strict religious environment and have deconstructed all of that. People, for various reasons, lose their belief or never even had a belief in the supernatural world to begin with. And if that's you, I respect your views. I'm not here trying to push anything on you, but just answering your question for me, why do I believe? Because the supernatural has always been more real to me than the physical world. And I'm not exaggerating. My life has been one supernatural experience after another. You can ask my husband. I am actually very tuned out of the physical world, and he used to get so frustrated with me because I don't notice details. Because I'm not tuned in here. And this is something I've really had to work on with learning mindfulness and presence. Somebody commented, no justice for the innocent after all the damage that has been done. And how exactly does karma serve the returning soul if he or she doesn't remember why they are returning to this planet in the first place? It's like being sent into battle without a weapon, an objective, a map, or a compass. I'm not sure exactly what, but something simply is not right about that. Okay, first of all, we may be confusing the word justice with judgment here, because I never said there was no justice. I said there is no judgment, and I specifically defined judgment as God sitting up in heaven waiting to sentence somebody to eternal hell. And then I went on to reiterate several options of things that people may have to experience. So, which definitely are the definition of justice, especially when you're talking about experiencing the direct consequences of your actions or experiencing exactly what you did to somebody else. How does karma serve the returning soul if he or she doesn't remember why they are returning? Because what we are coming here to learn are intuitive things. So this life experience, according to my understanding, is specifically designed to help us dig into the heart, into the spirit, and learn to see with the eyes of the spirit. It's about our character. It's about what comes out under pressure. So if we knew and remembered exactly why we were here, then the challenge would be taken out of it, right? It would be like giving somebody the answers in a test. Being sent into battle without a weapon, an objective, a map, or a compass? No, because you still have all those things. The weapon, the objective, the map, and the compass is within you. It's your spiritual connection. It's your spiritual awareness. It's your knowledge that love is what matters. We all have that within us. You already know the answers. But are you going to put them into practice? Are you going to do, we all already know what the right thing is to do. We already have the conscience that tells us, make the loving choice, make the honest choice, make the courageous choice. So we know the answers, but are we going to put them into practice? Are we going to develop those muscles? That's what this life is about. Next question. The real issue is not the what about Hitler issue. It's the question of why, if God's in his heaven and all is ultimately infinite bliss, we need to learn to love at all. After all, love is only really necessary because the world is bad in the first place. So it seems backwards that the world is bad in order to teach us to love because the world is bad. So what is the world a school for? An even worse place? It doesn't make sense. This is a really deep question. This is a question I have asked myself. I've been digging for the answer to this question for the past several years. And once again, I'm not claiming to have the answers, but I will share with you some thoughts. You guys know I interview near-death experiencers and I ask them some variation on this question quite often. And I'm just going to share with you 4 different answers that I have been given, and you do with it what you will. When I ask people, what is the reason for this life? Why are we here? Why do we have to learn how to love? Howard Storm's answer was, it's the difference between theoretical and experiential learning. So when you're on the other side, it is theoretical, but when you have that contrast of going to a place where you're experiencing the opposite of what you are, where you're experiencing something that is unloving, a situation where it's difficult to love, this is experiential learning. Now you are experiencing. Over there, you know what love is, but here you experience what love is, because now you're learning, how do I love when somebody is unloving, when it's hard to love in this situation? How do I forgive when somebody's done me wrong and really hurt me? But we've talked a lot about that, so let's move on. Number 2, Johnny Davis. His answer was, we are already love, but we don't know that. We have to learn what we are. And his answer reminded me of a story that I heard, or an example that I heard Aaron Abke give one time, where he said a baby, a newborn baby, who has developed no ego, is living purely in the moment, reacting honestly crying when they're sad, laughing when they're happy. The newborn baby is enlightened. But why do they have to go through life? Why do they have to develop an ego? Why do they have to develop self-awareness and all these things? Because the difference between the newborn baby and the sage is that the sage knows they are enlightened. And that's where the beauty is. 3, Dennis Bullock said, "This life is not about learning to love. We are already perfect love. It's about the experience." And someone said, and I cannot remember who said this, but I am going to look it up and try to find this person. Someone who had a near-death experience said, "This life is about the experience of being human. We are already perfect love in spirit, but we come here to learn how to exist in the physical." Why is that necessary? I don't have an answer for that right now. 4, Christian Sundberg, who I heard in an interview one time say, it's not so much about learning how to love as it is about the expansion of love. There's an expansion of love going on, and we all wanted to be a part of it. That's why we're here. And I have an interview coming up with him in November, so I'm going to ask him about this. It's my most pressing question that I want to ask him. But my thoughts about this are that love is evolving upward and getting bigger and better and more expansive, and love is getting more loving. I suspect that the entire universe, God included, is expanding and evolving and becoming better and better and better, and somehow this experience of contrast is contributing to that. And we are trying to see how far away from my source can I get in a simulated experience and still be what I am and bring love to that situation. And somehow this is causing love to expand. Those are just my thoughts. Could be right, could be wrong. Somebody says, "I think God is going to judge us, and it is going to be totally okay because God is the supreme being. We got to do what God tells us. If God says we should stay in hell forever, then that is right. If God says we should stay elsewhere, that's also going to be right. If I draw a picture, I am allowed to do whatever I want to it. Same is true for our Creator. He doesn't have to be kind. There are no rules for the Most High, no laws. God is above all law, period." And I just want to very gently say that what you've described here is an evil dictator. And that is not the kind of God that I'm in the business of believing in or following, much less do I think that that's what God is like. Of course, the Creator has to be kind. If the Creator was an evil monster, it would be our responsibility to put a stop to him. Diana Fletcher says, "People who have had pleasant near-death experiences often state that there is no judgment in the afterlife, but are they qualified to speak about all possible experiences in the afterlife or only the type of experience they have had?" Diana, I agree with you, and once again, that is why I specifically looked at the hellish experiences for this particular video, and why I specifically seek out people who've had hellish experiences to interview and learn from. Alright guys, I'm going to need to wrap this video up. There's one more comment that I would like to read. My friend Sarah says, "I wonder if this need to come back and do better, get it right, or work off karma through suffering is what A Course in Miracles is trying to free us from. Because it seems like we'll keep coming back and trying to right wrongs and do better until we're able to accept forgiveness for ourselves and forgive everyone who has wronged us." And Sarah, I just want to give this comment a standing ovation. This is it right here. And I didn't get into this in the video because it is a whole other video topic to itself. But this is what it is all about. When we learn to forgive both ourselves and others, we break the wheel of karma. I've read stories where people have had life reviews and Jesus has told them, well, you asked for forgiveness for this certain thing, so it did not show up in their life review. I've read other stories like the woman who was told that she would have to experience her family's pain until they had forgiven her, right? Forgiveness is the key. Forgiveness is the way out of this. When someone has learned forgiveness, like truly learned forgiveness, you're impossible to offend and there's nothing to judge. Forgiveness is the answer. Forgiveness is the key. And thank you for bringing this up, Sarah. But I have to run now to drop my kids off at an appointment. Be loved, be happy, be at peace, and thank you for watching.